They're really asking, do you and your husband have unprotected sex?
Hi, I'm Caitlin.
Hi, I'm Chloe.
Hi, I'm Cheryl.
Hi, I'm Leah, and this is
Zula
Chit-Chats!
Okay, bring her out.
Okay, hi guys. On today's episode of Zula Chit-Chats, we are going to be talking about children and specifically not having them. Okay, yeah, because I think this is something that not a lot of people talk about because every time among my friends I always say people, I don't mind like have kids maybe like sometime after I get married.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very stereotypical type of path that you go along. But on this panel, we have 3 people who actually don't want to have kids in life. Now, ever, later, I don't know. But they will share their stories. But first, before we do that, maybe y'all can share your relationship status as well, because I think that's quite important when it comes to discussing this topic.
I am dating someone. I think it's pretty serious. Like, we've been friends since uni, like acquaintances, but like we've been dating seriously for like a year-ish, more than 3 months. Yeah.
Woohoo!
Okay, I'm currently seeing someone now. It's been like a couple of months.
Okay.
So yeah, we're pretty chill.
Okay.
I've been married for 9 years. No, sorry, 7 years. Been together with my husband for 9 years in total. Yeah, and all is good,
Nice.
No child is good.
Okay. Which segments into the next question, right?
Sure.
Which is about the concept of having kids, right?
Yeah, okay.
And your opinion on
Yeah.
that concept and like what is your decision on that, you know?
To me, having a child is expensive in Singapore. When you walk into, example, a supermarket, you see a tin of milk, like milk powder, wow, $80 and it doesn't last you for 2 weeks, okay? And then I don't go through labor pain. It's not that I scared. It's just intense. Your C-sec is thousands of dollars, few $100s. Epidural, another 1K, 2K, 3K. For what, Yeah, I don't go through this kind of thing.
But I think in that sense, like, do you not like kids?
Frankly speaking, I love kids. But the problem is having my own to bring them up is another question. Yeah, I mean, kids are cute lah, but I don't want my own cute kids. What if one day I didn't bring them up well, and then they blame me, hey, mommy, you never bring me up well, What? My friends got this, my friend got that. I don't have, this kind of stuff. I don't want my kids to go through this kind of journey. Yeah, even though I know I can provide, but just in case. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess you come from a standpoint where you, as a parent, you want to give your kids like
The
the
best.
best. Correct.
Yeah. Right.
And the thing is, like, Singapore is like so expensive. I think kids, like one kid is like how many million? 2 million. 1 million, 2
Around
million.
there.
Should ask
Yeah.
my mother, but yeah.
I think she's right. Like wanting to have kids and being able to have kids are 2 very different things. And I think at the very least, like you have the responsibility to know that like it's not going to be comfortable for you and your kids. So I think that's honestly a very respectable decision.
Thank you very much, daughter. That's why you're my daughter now.
That's why she adopts everyone in the office
Yeah,
actually.
Pretty much.
133 of you friends.
Yeah.
For me, it's like the only reason why you should have a child is because you want to nurture another human being to the best of their potential, but like on their terms. And I think that's very, very difficult lah. It requires a lot of maturity.
True.
Yeah. Like it's not so much like I'm afraid of having children because I really don't think I am. It's just like I don't see why we need to follow the societal standard just because they say must have children.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not like mandatory by the government or anything, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like broadcasted to us in a way.
Yeah.
After I get married, what do I do? And sometimes naturally it'll be like, okay, after I get married, likely I'll get kids, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, my reasons are a little bit different. So I think a very big reason why I don't want to have kids comes from the way I grew up. So
Okay.
Small backstory, my parents split very, very early on. When I was 11 or 12, I found out that like my dad secretly was like married and he has like 3 kids on his own.
Huh?
Yeah, that's another story for another day. For the first 11 years of my life, right, I saw how my mom had to struggle and sacrifice a lot to give up for me. And obviously, like what Caitlin says, right, every parent will want the best for their child. And I saw the very extreme of how much it takes to sacrifice to raise a child well. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't know if I can give that because I've never seen a world where like 2 parents can raise a kid properly. Like that has never existed to me.
Okay.
So I think that makes it very difficult for me to imagine how I can be a parent.
Another reason why a lot of like I want to say Gen Z and increasingly millennials don't want children is like environmental footprint, like the carbon footprint is crazy. Like the biggest thing that you can do for the environment is basically not to have a child, like have one child less. Because like the amount that they will consume, you know, it's just nuts lah.
Yep.
I think on the note of environmentalism, I think on the other end of the spectrum was like at the end of the day, our kids are gonna be here for a way longer time than we are gonna be. With the way the environment is going towards in terms of climate change, in terms of like global warming and everything, what kind of world are we leaving behind for our children?
They're really here for a good time, not a long time.
It's like, woo! Every day the world ending and they just the purge every day, you know what I mean? Siren, and then kill people and
So
some
bad,
shit.
yeah.
Fucking madness,
Yeah.
man. But I mean, okay, that's like a bigger picture.
That's a
kind of
bigger
scheme,
picture,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Very existential.
yeah, it
problems,
is. But I mean, it's still a valid point. It's still a valid point. Actually, my mum talked to me about this recently. Like randomly, like we were just having a conversation. She's like, actually, if I had a choice, I wouldn't have kids.
Oh,
Yeah, my mum told this to me. Then I was like, oh, why? And then she said that, actually because she feels like she's not a very motherly mom in a sense, like, you know, like how, like she also has expectations, like probably she plays on herself, right?
Of course.
She feels that, like, you know, she couldn't give like her children that, so if she had a choice, she wouldn't. So it's like sometimes you only realize it when you're older. So after you have kids, and you're like, actually, like, yeah, if I had a choice, I wouldn't want to also, because like you realize after going through the experience, like, yeah, maybe this is something that I could have done better, but after all is past already, you can't do it anymore.
Yeah. So in a way, isn't it kind of like we are redefining like what we want to accept as a societal norm and or not?
Kind of. Yeah, I mean that kind of leads to like the next question, kind of
okay,
ish.
yes.
Next question, but in terms of like societal expectations of like couples or families, right? Do you think that there's been this pressure for people to like give birth and have children?
From what I read, like today online comment section on Facebook, straight start comment section, you know what's up? Like, like example, like there's a recent article, go and move out and rent by himself.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, inside my article here.
She also wrote one for Zula. Yes.
But like also it's like when someone's like, oh yeah, I have no kids and I have managed to do these kind of things. Like a lot of the comments will be like, never think about your parents, you're like unfilial to them and stuff like that, because there's this prevalent societal expectation that you need to give your parents grandchildren, and that one I don't understand is because like why you must make for them. No, genuinely I don't understand. Like,
yeah, I also don't understand.
like I understand the concept of like filial piety because your parents grew up, but then it's like, why does that idea of filial piety extend to, like in Chinese it's like give them a grandchild to carry? I think this is very different from like, you know, 30-40 years ago where you're like, you get married, you must have your own family, and the idea of family is that you must have your own kids to have a complete thing. Yeah. Family can also be just two of your, or it can be like blended family. It's like, I think the idea of family is also changing, which is also maybe why people are like more accepting or considering not having children.
Yeah.
In the past, like every Chinese New Year, hey, when you want to have a baby? 你几时要有 baby?
Oh, do you get that a lot?
I kena.
Oh, okay, then how do you reply?
I was like, I give birth, you look after for me, okay?
Oh, they're really asking, do you and your husband have unprotected sex?
Wow,
No, but it's very rude.
Yeah.
That's why it's very rude. You should not ask that. Yeah.
So I actually apologized to my mom. I say, Mommy, sorry, I cannot give you a grandchild. Then she was like, it's okay, as long as, you know, you're happy, every day take it easy, okay.
For y'all, right, is it like do you think like your relatives or like your parents have anything to say about like this decision?
I think generally people don't really ask me whether I have kids or not, maybe because I'm a little bit younger, so I'm not at that point yet. But it's not something that people really bring up around me. I'm not very sure why. Like maybe because they know of my history and stuff like that. That's why they don't want to talk about this actively. Like, you know, during Chinese New Year, I don't even get questions about whether I find boyfriend already or not. Like, no one wants to. Yeah, like no one. No. Yeah, like do we want to dig up her trauma? I don't think so.
I think my mother wants grandchildren. Cause like she always. Oh, none of my sisters are married. Like all of us are not married, and I don't think we are in any way there. But she will always like, next time you all have children, right? Don't bring them to my house and make me take care of them. But it's like, why do you keep bringing up?
You low-key want it to happen, but like you just sort of FKK like, no, I don't want that. It's like very hard to get. Reverse psychology also.
It's like, I'll be like, oh yeah, you know, if like we have a next generation, then it's like they cannot speak Cantonese. Then it's like, just bring to my house. So it's like very conflicting messages. You get what I mean?
The whole relatives point depends on how traditional everybody is, right? But I think for other cultures. Actually, I'm not too sure because like, I mean didn't we have anyone else to ask us
Literally
about
just straight up Chinese
It's like
people.
sorry, Chinese people on this panel today.
And one
Ah,
Angmoh.
yeah.
And not Angmoh lah, like Eurasian, you know. But I think like if just a side note for other cultures, if you guys also have your opinions to share about this, like let us
Leave in
know
the
as well.
comments.
Because I think it'll be interesting to see like the difference
Yeah.
between that as well, the different cultures as well. But we'll move on to the next question. What are like your partner's thoughts on this?
My partner doesn't want kids. He's told his mom also. So like I think they're quite cool with it. Yeah, they don't pressure me or
That's good.
anything.
My husband, he is okay to have children. So I did have a conversation with him. I was like, sorry, I don't think I want to bear a child for you. Then he was like, okay, what? I mean, we can be happy together as us, as one. Then not necessary to have a kid to be happy.
But like, did he ever go like but what if you want in the future or something like that?
Nope.
You know what I mean? He was just like,
He
okay,
was
I'm
like,
cool.
shoot. He quite a big one, so he was like, 我就有没有就没有 lor, it's okay 的.
Wow,
Sounds
最好的。
Yeah.
I think it's also like then in that case it's important to find someone who really sees the same believes in the
correct.
same
Like
way,
value
sees the
lor.
same values as you
Yeah.
lah. Yeah, but the whole deal breaker thing, like if one person wants to have kids and the other person doesn't, then it's
It's a
like
big deal breaker.
it's a big
Yeah.
deal breaker no matter what. Like you can't think you can convince someone to want to have kids or like convince someone to like not want to have kids. You should respect that person's decision.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Okay, so I briefly brought this up with my partner like a couple of times, but it was just a very casual thing, and I think he was very understanding about it. So he just said like, obviously I understand what you have gone through in the past and like why like your reasons make sense. Like it's not like you're just being unreasonable. But I did tell him that like my reasons might change in the future or my opinion might change in the future also, because all of my my thought process at this point in time is very based on like what I think I am incapable of doing, or like because I don't understand how a family unit will function that way.
Yeah, I think also it's about stability, right? And about like the whole financial capability. So there's a lot of factors. I think your decisions can change over time, right? So sometimes it's the right person, then you want to do it with them, that kind of thing. But also I think it might be the right time is more important than the right person, because at the right time you should be as capable of sustaining yourself as well as potentially having extra funds to sustain someone else.
Yep.
And also have like the mental and emotional capacity to deal with another human being in your life that you cannot just throw away and like
Make new one.
Yeah.
Goodbye, I don't want you.
I think a lot of the discussions that we're having today centers around this whole idea of whether the consequence of having a kid, like in terms of like the fears or what we're bringing to the kid, outweighs the happiness of having a kid. I feel like for the people who really, really love kids, right, they are all on this side where they're like, oh my god, the kid's so cute and I'm just gonna like do like what I have to do to take care of the kid. But I think for us, like maybe the reality of it outweighs everything else, such that we are a lot more hesitant or a lot less excited about the idea of having a kid right now.
Okay, so we asked on IG for any questions that people might have when it comes to this topic lah, right? The first one that I see is actually, who's gonna take care of you when you're old?
My mom actually, from very, very early on, she always said like, I don't expect you to take care of me when I'm old. Because she thinks that filial piety is important, but she said at the end of the day, it's your decision whether you want to be filial, whether that's your definition of filial piety or not.
I don't know why people have this mindset that like if you give birth to children, they are like a backup. And maybe I grew up in a less traditional environment, so I never really had that whole expectation of like, oh, you need to take care of like your parents when they were like, of course I will take care of my parents. Like, what the fuck? You think I'm like heartless, is it? But I would not want to place these expectations on my child, because like after all, I made a decision to give birth to them, right? They didn't make a choice. They never asked to be born.
Exactly.
They never fucking came
God.
into this world like, okay, my job here is to serve you, ma'am. Like, hello.
Okay, on one hand, I understand it's like you raise them up.
Correct.
So it's like, yeah, they fine. In the sense they owe you.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, but they didn't even ask to like take this loan from this parent bank. You know what I mean? Then it's like, I just think that is selfish lah on the parents' part. So it's like that's why you end up with like the whole idea of like a savage generation where they have to take care of their children, but they also have to take care of their parents, and then it's just like they cannot plan for their own retirement. So,
Like they don't take care of themselves. I find it very funny because I feel it's very ironic that the way we say our views, right? People can often interpret it as like, oh, that's being very selfish because you only want to care about yourself. You don't want to like, take care of this child, whatever. But like, think about it. Like, if you are giving birth to a child for them to take care of you, I mean, there's one is also selfish. So like, okay. Then the other question is, do you think you will regret the decision down the road? So in the sense like, do you feel like maybe later on, once you're too old, then you cannot have kids anymore? Then you're like, shit, actually I want to have kids at that point in time.
My question back to the person who asked this was, do you think that there are parents out there that regret having the kid? So the point is, all of these things, right, it's very hard to tell whether, because there's no trial run, there's no test run, right? You have means have already lah, don't have then don't have lah. So like I think whatever decision that you choose to make, right, as long as you know that you won't regret this and you can bear with the consequences, like if you can bear with the decision of having it or if you can bear with the consequences of not having it, I think if you can live with yourself, that's more important than having all these like speculations on like what if or what if not.
Yeah, and to like add on to that point, so it's like that's the idea of like being able to like nurture like a small human being to like adult, right? But it's like you also have friends, right? You also have like maybe cousins, you also have like sisters, whatever. So it's like who is to say that you won't be able to fulfill this like nurturing aspect? Like you can love them, you can love someone that is not your own child, right? And still have like a very good parental kind of relationship with them. That's why there's like the idea of godparents and stuff. Yeah, so it's like you still will have that nurturing aspect and you still won't lose out on the idea of like the generational bond. And like I mean some people will say like okay then the idea of like blood family, but it's like family is also chosen lah, and like again like cousins, you know, they're still your blood, you know? Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
I guess that's all the questions. Thank you guys for watching this episode, and I mean, I guess we talked a little bit about our rationale on why you know they particularly don't want to have kids. But if you do want to see an episode on why people do want to have kids or have already kids, then many people in the office or outside who might want to share their motherhood, fatherhood experiences as well. So leave in the comments below and let us know what are the questions you want us to ask them, you know, on the episode. Yeah, and we will do it for you if you want to see that. So remember to like, share, and subscribe. Also leave a comment about what you like, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.